I used to be the brightest star in this company. Ambitious, talented, disciplined. Everything they said they wanted in a future leader. But one dirty political move from the board of directors changed everything. They demoted me to the lowest position imaginable, an intern. A public humiliation designed to break me. Nobody believed I'd rise again. Nobody imagined that one day I'd be sitting in the CEO chair of this $100 million corporation, systematically destroying the careers of every single person who trampled on me to get ahead. My name is Amelia Grant, and 6 months ago, I was the strategic director at Horizon Link Corp., one of the largest telecommunications companies on the East Coast. At 32, I'd achieved what most people only dream of: corner office on the 42nd floor, direct access to the C-suite, and my name whispered in boardrooms as the heir apparent to the CEO position. I'd sacrificed everything for this company. 12-hour days were my minimum. Weekends were for strategy documents. Relationships crumbled while I built empires of data networks and billion-dollar contracts. That Tuesday morning started like any other. I arrived at 6:30 a.m., my usual time, armed with my triple-shot espresso and the quarterly projections I'd refined until 2 a.m. the night before. The security guard, Thomas, gave me his usual nod. The elevator hummed its familiar tune as it lifted me toward what I thought would be another day of conquest. I should have noticed the signs. The way conversations died when I walked past the break room. How my assistant, Jessica, couldn't meet my eyes when she mumbled, "Good morning." The fact that Brad Morrison, my supposed equal in the strategic development division, the man who'd smiled at me just yesterday while complimenting my Singapore expansion proposal, was already in the main conference room with the entire board of directors at 7 a.m. The email came at 7:15 a.m., not even the courtesy of a face-to-face meeting. "Ms. Grant, please report to conference room A immediately. Richard Blackstone, CEO." I remember the walk down that hallway, my heels clicking against marble floors, each step echoing like a countdown. Through the glass walls, I could see them all. 12 board members, Richard at the head, and Brad sitting where I usually sat, wearing the same smug expression I'd seen him perfect over 3 years of pretending to be my ally. "Amelia," Richard began, not even offering me a seat. "The board has conducted a thorough review of the Singapore expansion incident. The Singapore incident, one delayed shipment, one vendor who defaulted, a vendor Brad had actually recommended, but somehow that detail had vanished from the official records. $3 million in losses that I'd already recovered through alternative channels. But apparently, that didn't matter. After careful consideration," Richard continued, his voice devoid of the warmth he'd shown when he'd personally recruited me 5 years ago, "we've decided a restructuring is necessary." Brad couldn't hide his smile. I watched him try, watched him press his lips together, but the corners kept twitching upward. "You're firing me?" I kept my voice steady, even as my world tilted. "No," Richard said, and for a moment, hope flickered. "We believe in second chances at Horizon Link. You'll be transferred to our internship program. It's a 6-month probationary period. You'll report to Janet in Human Resources for your new assignment." Internship program. The words hung in the air like a bad joke. I looked around the room, searching for one sympathetic face, one person who might speak up about the insanity of demoting a strategic director to intern. Nothing. Just carefully averted gazes and Brad's barely contained glee. "This is effective immediately," Richard added. "Security will escort you to clear out your office. You'll be relocated to the 2nd floor." The 2nd floor, where the interns sat in cramped cubicles, fighting over the single working printer. Where I'd started 5 years ago, hungry and eager, before clawing my way up through sheer force of will and talent. "I see," I said. Because what else could I say? Sue them? With what money, against Horizon Link's army of lawyers? Quit? And let them win completely, with no severance, no references, nothing but a suspicious gap in my resume? The security escort was the final humiliation. 2 guards flanking me as I packed my achievements into a cardboard box. My MBA from Wharton, the Executive of the Year award from just 8 months ago, the photo with the governor after we'd secured the state infrastructure contract. All of it dumped unceremoniously into a box that had once held printer paper. The news spread through the building faster than wildfire. By the time I reached the second floor, every cubicle prairie dog had popped up to stare. The new interns, kids fresh out of college who'd been fetching my coffee just last week, whispered behind their hands. Someone had already cleared out the worst cubicle for me, the one by the men's bathroom with the flickering fluorescent light. Janet from HR, a woman who'd once begged me to speak at her daughter's business school graduation, handed me my new badge with practiced indifference. "Your supervisor will be Brad Morrison," she said. "He specifically requested to oversee your transition." Of course he did. I sat in that cubicle, staring at the ancient computer they'd assigned me, listening to Brad's laughter echoing from his new office, my old office, 40 floors above. The same Brad who'd stolen my research on the Southeast Asian market expansion. The same Brad who'd been feeding the board poisoned whispers about my aggressive leadership style and inability to collaborate. The same Brad who'd orchestrated this entire coup while sharing lunch with me and asking about my weekend plans. But as I sat there, surrounded by the ruins of my career, something crystallized inside me. This wasn't an ending. They thought they'd broken me, reduced me to nothing. A cautionary tale about ambition and hubris. They thought I'd slink away in shame, another casualty of corporate warfare. They had no idea what they'd just created. The first week as an intern was designed to break me completely. Brad made sure of that. "Grant!" His voice would boom across the floor. He never called me Amelia anymore. "Coffee run, triple shot for me, and grab orders for the entire strategy team. Don't forget the specific temperatures this time." 23 coffee orders. I memorized each one, down to the half pump of sugar-free vanilla and the oat milk heated to exactly 145 degrees. The barista at the lobby Starbucks, who used to greet me as Ms. Grant, now watched me juggle carrier trays with poorly hidden pity. The strategy team, my former team, wouldn't even look at me when I distributed their drinks. Karen, who I'd promoted twice, actually snapped her fingers at me when I forgot her extra napkin. The photocopying was worse. Brad would send me 500-page documents to copy at 4:45 p.m. Knowing the good machines shut down at 5 for maintenance, I'd stand at the one functioning printer on the second floor, feeding pages one by one while my former subordinates walked past, heading home to their families. Sometimes they'd pause, like they wanted to say something, then hurry away. "Rough day?" asked Marcus, one of the other interns, a 22-year-old fresh from NYU. He meant well, but his sympathy stung worse than the cruelty. "Just peachy," I replied, restarting the printer after another paper jam. The humiliation was methodical. Brad scheduled me for note-taking in meetings I used to lead, forcing me to sit in the corner with my laptop, recording the bad decisions and flawed strategies I couldn't comment on. He'd occasionally pause mid-presentation to ask, "Did you get that, Grant? I know multitasking isn't your strong suit." The boardroom would chuckle. 12 executives earning 7 figures, laughing at the fallen star serving as their cautionary tale. But 3 weeks in, something unexpected happened. While organizing Brad's files, another mindless task meant to humiliate, I found inconsistencies. Not just small ones. We're talking about offshore accounts that didn't match quarterly reports, contract amendments that had never been approved by legal, a shell company in Delaware that seemed to exist solely to funnel money from our government contracts. At first, I thought I was misreading things. Sleep deprivation and stress playing tricks. But the more I dug during my filing duties, the clearer the picture became. Brad wasn't just corrupt, he was sloppy about it. Arrogant. He'd been so focused on destroying me that he'd handed me unlimited access to his documentation, never imagining I'd have the energy to look closer. I started taking photos with my personal phone, every receipt, every irregular transaction, every email he'd printed and forgotten to shred. The evidence mounted while I maintained my broken facade, shuffling around the office with downcast eyes and slumped shoulders. The worst moment came during week 4. The company anniversary gala, an event I'd organized for 3 years running. Brad made sure I was assigned to coat check duty. For 5 hours, I hung up designer jackets and retrieved them for people who'd once sought my mentorship. My replacement, some Harvard MBA Brad had fast-tracked, gave my speech. My exact words about innovation and market resilience, read from cards I'd written months ago. Amelia? A soft voice interrupted my spiral into fury. It was David Kim, a senior engineer from the telecommunications infrastructure team. He'd always been kind but quiet, the type who preferred coding to corporate politics. "This is wrong. What they're doing to you." I forced a smile. "It's fine, David." "Really?" "No, it's not." He glanced around, then leaned closer. "Some of us remember what you did for this company. The Singapore deal wasn't your fault. We know that." "Doesn't matter what anyone knows," I said, handing him his coat. "Maybe not now," he said quietly. "But there are more of us than you think. People Brad stepped on to get where he is. People waiting for someone to stand up to him." He pressed a business card into my hand, not his Horizon Link one, but personal contact information. "When you're ready to fight back, you won't be alone." That night, I sat in my studio apartment I'd had to downgrade from my downtown loft, surrounded by printed evidence of Brad's corruption. David's card sat on my coffee table like a lifeline, but I wasn't ready to take it. Not yet. The humiliation wasn't complete, and neither was my documentation. Days blurred together, coffee runs, photocopying, being screamed at by junior managers drunk on their tiny power over someone who used to terrify them. I lost 15 pounds I couldn't afford to lose. My hands developed a permanent shake from exhaustion and rage, but every insult, every degradation, every moment of abuse was fuel. They were so busy enjoying my fall, they never noticed me documenting theirs. The Friday of week 5. Brad called me into his office, my old office. He'd redecorated, of course. Gone were my clean lines and efficiency. Now it looked like a monument to toxic masculinity. Dark leather, hunting prints, a putting green in the corner. "How are you finding your new position, Grant?" He didn't look up from his computer. "It's been educational," I said truthfully. He laughed. "I bet it has. Tell me, do you still think you're CEO material after spending 5 weeks fetching coffee and making copies?" I stayed silent. "That's what I thought." He finally looked at me, and his smile was pure venom. "You know, I actually did you a favor. You were never cut out for leadership. Too emotional, too aggressive, too—" He paused, savoring the moment. "Ambitious for your own good. Will that be all, Mr. Morrison?" "Actually, no." He stood, walking around the desk to tower over me. "Tomorrow's quarterly board meeting. I want you there taking minutes. I want you to watch as I present the new 5-year strategy, the one that's going to make me CEO when Richard retires next year. I want you to document your replacement's rise to everything you'll never be." I nodded, keeping my face neutral. "Of course, Mr. Morrison." As I walked out, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Check the Delaware filing from March 2023, cross-reference with the Phoenix project budget. A friend." That night, I did exactly that. And what I found wasn't just corruption, it was a conspiracy that went all the way to Richard Blackstone himself. Brad wasn't just stealing from the company, he was doing it with the CEO's blessing, setting up a golden parachute for Richard's retirement while bleeding Horizon Link dry. They'd demoted me to intern to shut me up, to discredit me before I could discover what they were really doing. But in their arrogance, they'd given me exactly what I needed: access, invisibility, and rage enough to burn their entire kingdom down. The transformation began at 5 a.m. in a dimly lit diner on the outskirts of Manhattan. Across from me sat Marcus Reed, my old classmate from Wharton, now a corporate lawyer specializing in financial crimes. I'd reached out to him after weeks of careful consideration, and the exhaustion in his eyes matched mine. He'd driven up from D.C. overnight to meet me. "Jesus, Amelia," he said, reviewing the documents I'd compiled. "This isn't just fraud, this is systematic corporate theft. RICO violation levels of conspiracy? Can we use it? I asked, nursing my third cup of coffee. Eventually, yes. But if you go to the authorities now, you're just a disgruntled employee making accusations. You need leverage, real power. He studied me carefully. What are you really planning? I'm going to build something better, I said. And then I'm going to bury them with it. Marcus smiled, the kind of smile sharks might recognize. Now that's the Amelia I remember. What do you need? That meeting changed everything. Marcus didn't just offer legal advice, he connected me with venture capitalists who had their own axes to grind with Horizon Link. Turns out, Brad and Richard had burned a lot of bridges over the years. During the day, I maintained my broken intern persona. I fetched coffee, made copies, and endured Brad's escalating abuse with practiced submission. But my evenings belonged to a different woman entirely. I attended startup incubators under my middle name. I networked at underground tech meetups. I studied Horizon Link's weaknesses with the dedication of a general planning an invasion. The network grew organically. David Kim, the engineer who'd approached me at the gala, introduced me to others, brilliant developers and systems architects who'd been passed over for promotions. Their innovations stolen and credited to Brad's cronies. There was Sarah Martinez, a former sales director Brad had forced out after she'd refused his advances. James Wright, a procurement specialist who'd been blacklisted after questioning those suspicious Delaware transactions. One by one, the discarded talents of Horizon Link found their way to my Tuesday night support group at a community center in Brooklyn. We're not just victims, I told them during our fourth meeting. We're weapons they foolishly threw away. The business plan wrote itself. Horizon Link had grown fat and lazy, coasting on government contracts and legacy infrastructure. They'd stopped innovating, stopped caring about actual service. We would build something lean, aggressive, and revolutionary, focused on sustainable technology and transparent business practices. Everything Horizon Link wasn't. I need seed money, I announced one evening. $50,000 to start. I've got 20, David said immediately. My savings, it's yours. 10, Sarah added. My divorce settlement, might as well use my ex-husband's guilt money for something worthwhile. By the end of the night, we'd pooled $73,000. Not much in the corporate world, but enough to register next-gen communications and rent a cramped office space in Queens. The hardest part was maintaining my cover at Horizon Link. Every morning, I'd put on my cheap intern blazer, lower my eyes, and become invisible. Brad had started using me as his personal assistant, sending me on degrading errands, dry cleaning, picking up his prescriptions, even walking his girlfriend's yippy Pomeranian during lunch breaks. Grant, he barked one afternoon. The Q3 reports need organizing. I want them color-coded by division and summary notes on each. Have it done by morning. It was 6 p.m. The task would take all night. I nodded meekly and got to work. But while I organized his files, I photographed every page. Those Q3 reports revealed Horizon Link's client dissatisfaction rates, their actual versus reported revenue, the corners they were cutting on infrastructure maintenance, intelligence that would prove invaluable later. Marcus became my secret weapon on the legal front. He helped structure NextGen to be acquisition-proof with poison pills that would make any hostile takeover impossibly expensive. He also started quietly filing Freedom of Information Act requests about Horizon Link's government contracts, building a paper trail we could use when the time was right. You're playing a dangerous game, he warned during one of our strategy sessions. If they figure out what you're doing. They won't, I said. They're too busy congratulating themselves on breaking me. Brad actually told someone I've been model employee lately. Quiet, obedient, defeated. The breakthrough came through Sarah's connections. Her former clients still trusted her. And when she whispered about a new company that could provide better service at lower costs without the bureaucratic nightmare of Horizon Link, they listened. Our first contract was small, a regional medical network needing reliable communications infrastructure. $50,000, tiny by Horizon Link standards. But it was a start. I'll never forget signing that contract. It was 11 p.m. I was in the Queen's office with David and Sarah, and my hands shook as I wrote, Amelia Grant, CEO, Next Gen Communications. 6 weeks ago, I'd been organizing Brad's filing system. Now I was running my own company. We need more people, David said. Good engineers, salespeople, support staff. I know where to find them, I said, thinking of all the talented people Horizon Link had discarded over the years. Every person Brad stepped on to climb his ladder, every innovator Richard silenced to maintain the status quo, they're out there, waiting for something to believe in. The recruitment happened through whispers and encrypted messages, former Horizon Link employees who'd been forced out, competing firms' dissatisfied talents, hungry young graduates who'd been rejected for not fitting the corporate culture. Within a month, NextGen had 30 employees working remotely or from our Queen's office, all united by a shared desire to build something better and to watch Horizon Link fall. Meanwhile, at my day job, I'd become Brad's most trusted intern. He'd even given me access to his executive email account to manage his calendar. The arrogance was breathtaking. Every meeting, every strategic decision, every dirty secret flowed through my inbox. I forwarded everything to an encrypted server, building an arsenal of corporate intelligence. One evening, as I was leaving Horizon Link after another 16-hour day of humiliation, I passed the executive elevator. Richard Blackstone emerged, saw me, and actually stopped. Ms. Grant, he said, his tone almost paternal. I hear you're adapting well to your new position. I'm learning a lot, Mr. Blackstone, I replied truthfully. Good. Good. Sometimes a step backward is necessary for future growth. I hope you understand there was nothing personal in the board's decision. Nothing personal. They'd destroyed my career, humiliated me publicly, reduced me to fetching coffee and walking dogs. And it was nothing personal. I smiled the broken smile I'd perfected. Of course, Mr. Blackstone, I understand completely. He patted my shoulder condescendingly and walked away, never noticing the recording app running on my phone or the steel in my eyes. In 3 months, NextGen would announce its first major contract. In 6 months, we'd be competing directly with Horizon Link for government bids. And someday soon, Richard Blackstone would understand exactly how personal this had become. That night, I stood in the NextGen office, surrounded by whiteboards covered in strategy, timelines, and target markets. David was coding our proprietary communications protocol. Sarah was on the phone with potential investors. James was analyzing Horizon Link's vulnerable contracts. We were building an army in the shadows, and our former tormentors had no idea the war had already begun. The mask I wore at Horizon Link became heavier each day. But it was essential. 4 months into my internship humiliation, I'd perfected the art of being invisible while seeing everything. Brad had grown so comfortable with my submission that he'd discuss sensitive strategies right in front of me, like I was furniture. The Pentagon contract is ours, he boasted during a Monday morning meeting, while I sat in the corner taking notes. Senator Hayes owes Richard a favor. The bid doesn't even matter. I documented every word while NextGen prepared a competing proposal that would expose exactly why cronyism was bleeding taxpayers dry. Our bid came in 40% lower with superior technology, sustainable infrastructure that would reduce the Pentagon's communication costs by half within 2 years. The beauty of running NextGen while enslaved at Horizon Link was the intelligence advantage. I knew their pricing strategies, their technical limitations, their client pain points. Every weakness they'd ignored while counting their monopoly profits became our opportunity. Grant! Brad's voice cut through my planning. Personal errand, my car needs detailing, and I need you to handle my dry cleaning. Here's my apartment key. The doorman will let you in. I took his key with practiced servility, but my mind was calculating. Access to his apartment meant access to his personal files, his home computer, maybe even more evidence of the fraud I'd been documenting. The arrogance of giving me his key. It was like handing ammunition to someone you'd shot and left for dead. That evening, while Brad attended a client dinner I'd scheduled for him, I entered his Upper East Side apartment. The place reeked of nouveau riche desperation. Too much leather, too many screens, artwork chosen by a decorator to impress rather than inspire. But his home office was a goldmine. Financial records he'd never dare keep at Horizon Link. Offshore account statements. Even a handwritten journal where he'd documented his plans to force me out, dated 6 months before the Singapore incident. I photographed everything, then completed my actual errands, making sure his doorman saw me struggling with his dry cleaning like the broken servant they all believed I'd become. NextGen's growth was explosive, but calculated. We'd secured 3 more regional contracts, each stolen from under Horizon Link's nose. The telecommunications industry was small enough that whispers had started. Who was this new company delivering what Horizon Link promised but never fulfilled? We need to stay under the radar longer, Marcus advised during one of our strategy sessions. If they connect you to NextGen too soon. 3 more months, I promised. Just give me 3 more months. The breaking point came during month 5 of my internship. Horizon Link was hosting potential investors for a revolutionary new infrastructure project, technology that would lock in government contracts for the next decade. Brad strutted around the office like he'd already won, delegating the actual work to engineers while taking credit for their innovations. What he didn't know was that David Kim had been feeding me every technical specification. We'd developed a better version at NextGen, filing provisional patents that would make Horizon Link's revolutionary technology obsolete before it launched. Amelia, David whispered during one of our secret meetings. I've got 12 more engineers ready to jump ship. They're just waiting for a signal. Not yet, I said. Let them finish developing Horizon Link's project. Let them invest millions. Then we'll show the world what we've built. The double life was exhausting. By day, I was Brad's broken assistant, fetching his lunch and organizing his emails. By night, I was leading strategy sessions, reviewing code, and meeting with venture capitalists who'd heard rumors about the next big disruption in telecommunications. One VC, Patricia Winters from Apex Capital, was particularly interested. Your technology is impressive, she said during a late-night meeting in her Manhattan office. But what I find more intriguing is your team. Every resume reads like a revenge story against Horizon Link. I met her gaze steadily. Sometimes the best innovation comes from those who've been told they're not good enough. She smiled. I've been waiting 5 years for someone to challenge Horizon Link's monopoly. 15 million initial investment, with another 30 available after you hit your first-year targets. 15 million, more money than I'd ever dreamed of raising this quickly. But I kept my expression neutral, channeling the same composure that had carried me through 5 months of daily humiliation. We'll need complete autonomy, I said. No interference in hiring or strategic decisions. Done. But I have one condition. When you're ready to go public with your identity as CEO, I want to be in the room when Horizon Link finds out. The irony of my situation peaked the next morning when Brad assigned me to compile competitive analysis on emerging telecommunications companies. There's some startup called NextGen making noise, he said dismissively. Probably nothing. But Richard wants a report. Have it ready by end of week. I spent 3 days writing a report about my own company, carefully downplaying our capabilities while highlighting just enough success to seem credible. I described NextGen as a small but ambitious startup with limited resources and regional focus. I even recommended that Horizon Link ignore us to focus on more significant threats. Brad barely glanced at it before forwarding it to Richard with his name attached as author. The CEO's response, which Brad made sure to read aloud in front of me, was dismissive. Small players come and go. Focus on what matters. That evening, I signed the papers accepting Patricia's investment. NextGen now had the resources to wage a real war. We leased a floor in a building in Lower Manhattan, ironically, just 6 blocks from Horizon Link's tower. We could see their headquarters from our windows, a daily reminder of what we were building toward. The hiring spree was surgical. Every person Brad had wronged, every talent Richard had wasted, every innovator Horizon Link had discarded. They all received mysterious job offers from NextGen. The packages were generous, but more importantly, they offered something Horizon Link never had: respect and genuine opportunity. "Why should I trust this?" asked Jennifer Walsh, a former Horizon Link VP who'd been forced out after reporting sexual harassment. "How do I know NextGen isn't just another corporate nightmare?" "Because we've all lived through that nightmare," I told her. "Maintaining my anonymous CEO persona over encrypted video call. And we're building something different, something better." She joined within a week, bringing 24 clients who'd followed her career and were disgusted by how Horizon Link had treated her. Meanwhile, my internship was nearing its end. 6 months of humiliation, abuse, and intelligence gathering. Brad had started talking about potentially extending my internship indefinitely. He'd grown too comfortable having a former director as his personal servant. "You've really learned your place, Grant," he told me one afternoon, feet up on his desk while I organized his expense reports. "I might even recommend you for a junior analyst position in a year or two, if you continue to behave." "Thank you, Mr. Morrison," I replied, documenting how he'd expensed his girlfriend's vacation to Cabo as a client meeting. That night, I stood in NextGen's office, looking at our wall of achievements: 43 employees, 8 major contracts, revolutionary technology that would make Horizon Link's infrastructure obsolete, and a war chest of evidence that would destroy Brad Morrison and Richard Blackstone. Sarah burst in, phone in hand. "Amelia, you need to see this. The Department of Defense just released their RFP for the new communications grid, $500 million contract." The Pentagon contract Brad had been so sure was already his. I smiled, not the broken smile I wore at Horizon Link, but the razor-sharp expression of someone who'd spent 6 months planning for exactly this moment. "Start preparing our bid," I said. "It's time to show them what we've built." The war was about to begin, and Brad Morrison had no idea he'd already lost. The day NextGen went public with our Pentagon bid, I watched Brad's face drain of color from my corner of the conference room. He was mid-presentation when Richard Blackstone burst in, tablet in hand, his usual composure shattered. "What the hell is NextGen Communications?" Richard demanded, throwing the tablet on the conference table. The headline read, "Unknown Startup Challenges Horizon Link for $500 million Defense Contract with Revolutionary Green Technology." The competitive analysis said they were nothing. Brad stammered, shooting me a glance. I kept my eyes down, typing meeting notes like the obedient intern I'd pretended to be for 6 months. "Well, they're not nothing." Richard's voice could probably be heard 3 floors down. "They've undercut our bid by 30% and their technology specs are..." "How is this possible? This is next-generation infrastructure that makes our proposal look like it's from 2015. I bit my cheek to keep from smiling. Every specification they were reading had been developed by the engineers Horizon Link had ignored. Funded by the money from investors they'd alienated, and strategized by the director they'd tried to destroy. The next weeks were beautiful chaos. NextGen's announcement had sent shockwaves through the industry. Tech blogs called us the giant killer. The Wall Street Journal ran a feature on our sustainable technology that made Horizon Link's environmental record look criminal by comparison. Our website crashed 3 times from recruiter traffic. Everyone wanted to know who was behind this mysterious company. At Horizon Link, paranoia set in. Brad instituted mandatory loyalty meetings, desperate to find the leak he was convinced existed. He never suspected the intern refilling his coffee during those very meetings. "Someone's feeding them information," he ranted, pacing his office while I sat quietly in the corner, organizing his calendar. They knew exactly what we were planning. "Grant, I need you to go through every employee's email. Look for any communication with NextGen." "Of course, Mr. Morrison," I replied, gaining access to even more evidence of Horizon Link's internal collapse. The beauty was that there was no single leak. It was an exodus. Every week, another Horizon Link employee would quietly resign, only to resurface at NextGen. Our LinkedIn page became a reunion of Horizon Link's discarded talent. The comment sections were brutal. Best career move ever. Finally working for a company with integrity. Should have left the sinking ship sooner. Patricia Winters was true to her word about the investment. The additional $30 million came through after we secured 3 major healthcare system contracts that Horizon Link had considered beneath them. We were building from the ground up while they were trying to protect their crumbling empire from the top down. The Pentagon proposal presentation was scheduled for a Tuesday. The night before, I was at NextGen until 3 a.m. with my team, perfecting every slide, every specification, every number. Then I went home, grabbed 3 hours of sleep, and showed up at Horizon Link at 7 a.m. to make Brad's coffee. "Big day today, Grant," Brad said, not looking up from his phone. "We're going to crush those next-gen amateurs. I want you here manning the phones in case the Pentagon has any follow-up questions." "Absolutely, Mr. Morrison. I'll be right here." What Brad didn't know was that David Kim had installed a signal booster in the Horizon Link server room. Every document Brad sent, every panicked revision to their proposal, was being forwarded to our team in real time. We could counter their moves before they even made them. At 2 p.m., while Brad was presenting at the Pentagon, NextGen's presentation team, led by Jennifer Walsh and Sarah Martinez, was in the adjacent conference room. I knew because Sarah was texting me updates. They could hear Brad's pompous voice through the walls, making promises Horizon Link couldn't keep with technology they didn't really understand. Then it was our turn. Jennifer later told me the Pentagon officials' faces when she demonstrated our technology. Actual working prototypes, not the vaporware Brad was selling. Our sustainable infrastructure would reduce their energy costs by 60%. Our security protocols, developed by the engineers Brad had called too innovative, were unhackable by current standards. The killing blow came when a Pentagon official asked about company stability. Jennifer smiled and pulled up NextGen's financial reports, clean, transparent, and showing aggressive growth without a single offshore account or suspicious transaction. Then she casually mentioned that several former Horizon Link employees had expressed concerns about financial irregularities at their previous employer. Issues that might affect their ability to complete such a large contract. The seed of doubt was planted. Back at Horizon Link, I watched Brad return from the Pentagon presentation. His swagger was gone, replaced by something I'd never seen. Fear. "How did they know?" he kept muttering. "How did they know our exact proposal points?" Richard called an emergency board meeting. From my intern desk, I could see executives scurrying between offices, voices raised in panic. Stock prices had dropped 12% just on rumors that NextGen might win the contract. That evening, Marcus called with news that made everything worthwhile. The FBI is opening an investigation into Horizon Link's financial practices. Someone sent them a treasure trove of evidence about offshore accounts and contract fraud. Any idea who might have done that? None at all, I said, looking at the encrypted drive containing 6 months of carefully documented crimes. The next morning, a CNBC alert made Brad drop his coffee, the coffee I'd just handed him. Pentagon awards $500 contract to NextGen Communications, citing superior technology and corporate transparency. The mug shattered on his Italian marble floor. Coffee splattered across his handmade leather shoes. His face cycled through red, purple, and a concerning shade of white. "This is impossible," he whispered. Then, louder, "This is impossible!" Richard's reaction was worse. The CEO who'd orchestrated my downfall stood in the middle of the trading floor and announced that Horizon Link would be pursuing all legal options against NextGen for corporate espionage and unfair competitive practices. Good luck with that, I thought, mopping up Brad's coffee with paper towels like the good intern I was. Every piece of intelligence we'd used had been publicly available or legally obtained by former employees who'd never signed non-competes, because Horizon Link had been too arrogant to require them from disposable staff. That afternoon, something shifted in the office atmosphere. The fear had turned to suspicion. Employees whispered in corners, wondering who among them had betrayed the company. Brad called another loyalty meeting, this time with a security consultant who specialized in finding corporate spies. "Someone in this room," Brad announced, scanning the assembled staff, "is responsible for the greatest act of corporate sabotage in Horizon Link's history." His eyes passed right over me, the intern in the corner still taking notes on his paranoid rants. After 6 months, I'd become so invisible, so beaten down in their eyes, that I wasn't even worth suspecting. The investigator they'd hired interviewed everyone, except the interns. We were too insignificant, too powerless to matter. The perfect camouflage for a revolution. That night, Patricia Winters called with news that made my hands shake. 3 more major corporations want to jump ship from Horizon Link to NextGen. And Amelia? The board of Horizon Link has called an emergency session. Word is, they're looking for scapegoats. Your old friend Brad might not survive the week. I stood at my apartment window, looking at Horizon Link's tower lit up against the night sky. In 6 months, I'd gone from their brightest star to their ignored intern to their worst nightmare. And the best part? They still had no idea that Amelia Grant, the broken intern fetching their coffee, was the architect of their destruction. Tomorrow, my 6-month internship would officially end. Brad had already approved a 2-week extension, eager to keep his obedient servant a little longer. He had no idea those 2 weeks would be when everything came crashing down. The war wasn't over, it was just beginning. And I had a front-row seat to watch my enemies destroy themselves with their own weapons. The morning Financial Times changed everything. NextGen Communications valued at $400 million after latest funding round, CEO identity remains mystery, ran across the front page of the business section. I read it while making Brad's coffee, savoring every word like fine wine. Brad was literally foaming at the mouth when he stormed in. 400 million? 400 million? That's impossible. 6 months ago, they didn't exist. I handed him his coffee with practiced invisibility. Would you like me to compile press coverage, Mr. Morrison? Yes, no, I don't know. He threw the newspaper across the room. Just get Richard on the line. Emergency board meeting in 20 minutes. The boardroom that morning was a symphony of panic. Through the glass walls, I could see Richard pacing, Brad sweating through his 3rd shirt, and 12 board members looking like they'd witnessed a murder, their own companies. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed with messages from the NextGen team. Jennifer had just closed another major client. David's revolutionary compression algorithm had been featured in MIT Technology Review. Sarah had 3 Fortune 500 companies bidding against each other for implementation priority. Grant, Brad's scream echoed across the floor. I need the competitor analysis files, all of them, now. I delivered 37 files, each one documenting how thoroughly NextGen was dismantling Horizon Link's market share. Brad's hands shook as he reviewed them. The intern who'd compiled these reports stood 3 feet away, and he never made the connection. The FBI investigation accelerated everything. Agents arrived Thursday morning with boxes and warrants, seizing computers and documents. They set up in Conference Room A, the same room where I'd been demoted 6 months earlier. The poetry of it wasn't lost on me. Everyone remain calm, Richard announced over the intercom, his voice anything but calm. This is routine. We're cooperating fully. From my desk, I watched Brad attempt to delete files from his computer, not realizing the FBI had already imaged the servers, every crime, every offshore transfer, every piece of evidence I documented. They had it all. That afternoon, something extraordinary happened. CNBC broke into regular programming with Breaking Anonymous Source Reveals NextGen CEO Identity at Press Conference in 1 hour. The entire Horizon Link floor stopped working. Everyone gathered around televisions and computer screens. Brad stood frozen in his office doorway. Whoever it is, he muttered, I'm going to destroy them. I'm going to find every piece of dirt, every mistake they've ever made. I excused myself to the bathroom, but instead went to the stairwell. 20 floors down, a car was waiting. Sarah was driving, my suit hanging in the back seat. Ready? She asked. 6 months ready, I replied. The press conference was at the Marriott Marquis, 5 minutes away. Patricia Winters had arranged everything, the venue, the media contacts, even a hair and makeup team. But I declined the makeup. I wanted them to see exactly what 6 months of their abuse had done to me. The dark circles, the sharp cheekbones, the hardness in my eyes. All of it was part of the story. Ladies and gentlemen, Patricia announced to the packed room, I present the CEO of NextGen Communications. I walked onto that stage like I was walking into battle. The cameras started flashing before I even reached the podium. Tech reporters who'd been speculating for months leaned forward, and on the screens behind me, a live feed showed Horizon Link's stock price in real time. My name is Amelia Grant, I began, my voice carrying to every corner of the room. 6 months ago, I was Director of Strategic Development at Horizon Link Corp. Then I was demoted to intern in what I can only describe as an act of corporate persecution designed to silence my discovery of extensive financial fraud. The room erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Phones started ringing, and on the screen behind me, Horizon Link's stock began to plummet. For 6 months, I continued, raising my voice above the chaos. I documented everything, every crime, every lie, every betrayal of shareholder trust. That evidence is now with federal investigators. But I didn't just document their corruption. I built something better. NextGen Communications isn't just a company. It's proof that innovation trumps cronyism, that merit beats nepotism, and that sometimes the best revenge is massive success. Back at Horizon Link, according to David, who was still there, the scene was apocalyptic. Brad had collapsed into a chair, face white as paper. Richard was screaming at legal. Employees were rushing for the exits, literally and figuratively. LinkedIn showed 47 Horizon Link employees updating their status to seeking opportunities within the hour. The press conference questions came rapid fire. Ms. Grant, are you saying Horizon Link executives committed crimes? I'm saying the FBI has extensive documentation. Draw your own conclusions. What's NextGen's relationship with former Horizon Link employees? We've hired the best talent available. If Horizon Link discarded that talent, that's their loss. Do you have a message for Brad Morrison and Richard Blackstone? I looked directly into the main camera, knowing they were watching. Yes. You thought you broke me when you made me fetch your coffee and walk your dog. You thought you won when you watched me photocopy your documents and organize your files. But every humiliation was fuel. Every degradation was motivation. And every single document I touched is now evidence. You didn't break me. You built me into your worst nightmare. The room went silent for a moment, then erupted in applause. Behind me, Horizon Link's stock had dropped 37% in 12 minutes. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Richard Blackstone just resigned, effective immediately. Brad Morrison has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The board is in emergency session. I smiled, not the broken smile I'd worn for 6 months, but the smile of someone who'd played the longest game and won. One more thing, I announced. NextGen will be creating a fund for employees who've been victims of corporate abuse and wrongful termination. Because sometimes, the best entrepreneurs are the ones who've been told they're worthless. They just need someone to believe in them. As I walked off that stage, my phone exploded with messages. Job seekers, investors, clients, reporters. Everyone wanted a piece of NextGen's story. But the message that mattered most came from Jennifer Walsh. Check Horizon Link's website. I pulled it up. The entire executive team page had been removed. In its place was a single line. Horizon Link Corp is currently undergoing restructuring. We apologize for any inconvenience. 6 months ago, they'd thought they'd ended my career. Now, I'd ended theirs. And the most beautiful part, I'd done it all while serving them coffee, making their copies, and organizing their files. They'd handed me the weapons, showed me their weaknesses, and never once suspected that the intern in the corner was documenting their downfall. That night, I stood in NextGen's offices, our real offices, not hiding anymore, surrounded by my team. Former Horizon Link outcasts who'd become millionaires on paper in 6 months. David raised a champagne glass. To Amelia Grant, who proved that the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served at exactly the right temperature, with a side of FBI investigation. We laughed, we cried, we celebrated. But I knew this was just the beginning. Horizon Link was wounded, not dead. And I wouldn't rest until I was sitting in Richard Blackstone's former office, looking down at the city from the executive floor of the company that had tried to destroy me. The internship was over. The CEO was just getting started. The call came at 6 a.m. on a Sunday, 3 weeks after my public revelation. I didn't recognize the number, but something made me answer. Ms. Grant? The voice was familiar but broken. This is Harold Whitman, chairman of Horizon Link's board. Harold Whitman, the man who'd sat silent while Richard demoted me, who'd laughed at Brad's jokes about the fallen director. Now his voice trembled like a confession. Mr. Whitman, I said coolly, to what do I owe this pleasure? Horizon Link is dying. No preamble, no corporate speak. We've lost 60% of our value. The FBI has frozen our assets. Richard's in federal custody. Brad's turned state's evidence. We need new leadership. I let the silence stretch, savoring it like aged whiskey. We want to offer you the CEO position, he continued. Full autonomy. Whatever salary you demand. Just, please. The begging. The desperation. 6 months ago. I would have sold my soul for this call. Now. I had all the power. I'll consider it, I said. Send me the full financial statements. The real ones, not the fiction you've been feeding shareholders. What arrived was a massacre in spreadsheet form. Horizon Link was worse than dying. It was rotting from the inside. $800 million in hidden debt. Contracts canceled. The best employees gone, most of them to NextGen. They had maybe 3 months before bankruptcy. Patricia Winters called within hours. They've reached out to you, haven't they? How did you know? Because I'm on their emergency board committee. I've been pushing for this for weeks. Amelia, this is your chance. Not just to run Horizon Link, but to merge it with NextGen. Create a telecommunications giant, but one built on your principles. The poetry was perfect, too perfect to resist. The negotiation took place in the same conference room A where I'd been demoted. I walked in wearing the same suit I'd worn as director, tailored, expensive, the one that had been hanging in my closet throughout my internship. The board members couldn't meet my eyes. My terms are non-negotiable, I began. First, I want Brad Morrison and anyone involved in the fraud personally liable for damages. Their assets go toward employee severance. That's, someone started. Non-negotiable, I repeated. Second, NextGen acquires Horizon Link, not the other way around. This becomes a NextGen company with the Horizon Link name for brand recognition only. Harold nodded weakly. Third, every employee who was wrongfully terminated in the past 2 years gets offered their job back with back pay. The cost will be offset by recovering the embezzled funds. Fourth, I choose the entire executive team. No board interference for 2 years. They agreed to everything. What choice did they have? I was their last hope, the only person with the credibility to save even a piece of their empire. The Monday I returned to Horizon Link as CEO was orchestrated like a coronation. I'd invited every employee who'd witnessed my humiliation. The security guard, Thomas, who'd watched me escorted out with my cardboard box. The barista who'd served me 23 coffee orders. The janitor who'd seen me crying in the bathroom at 2 a.m. But first, I had accounts to settle. Brad Morrison was in his office, my old office, packing his belongings when I arrived. He looked up, and for a moment, tried his old smile. Amelia, Security is waiting, I said calmly. You have 10 minutes. Leave the company laptop. And Brad? The Pomeranian walking, the dry cleaning, the coffee runs? I documented every single violation of labor laws. My attorney will be in touch. His face crumbled. You can't. I can. I did. Now get out of my building. Security escorted him out the same way they'd escorted me, but there was no dignity in his exit. Employees lined the hallways, recording with their phones. Someone started a slow clap. By the time he reached the lobby, the entire building was applauding his destruction. Richard Blackstone was harder to face. Federal custody had aged him 10 years in 3 weeks. I sat across from him in the federal detention center, studying the man who'd orchestrated my downfall. "You knew," I said. "You knew Brad was setting me up, and you let it happen." "You were getting too close to the truth," he admitted, his orange jumpsuit a far cry from his $10,000 suits. "We thought if we discredited you, you thought wrong. Enjoy prison, Richard. I hear the coffee is terrible." Back at Horizon Link, I called an all-hands meeting. The auditorium was packed, fear and excitement crackling through the air. 6 months ago, I began. I stood in this building as an intern. I fetched coffee. I made copies. I was humiliated, degraded, and discarded. But I learned something valuable. This company's greatest asset was never its technology or contracts. It was the people, the ones management ignored, abused, and threw away. I paused, scanning the crowd. That changes today. Horizon Link is now part of the next-gen family. We're going to rebuild this company on principles of innovation, transparency, and respect, and we're going to start by promoting from within. David Kim, please stand up. David rose, confused. Our new Chief Technology Officer. The applause was thunderous. I continued, naming the forgotten talents, the overlooked innovations, the discarded diamonds who'd been waiting for someone to see their value. Sarah Martinez, Chief Sales Officer, Jennifer Walsh, Chief Operations Officer, James Wright, Chief Financial Officer. Each name was a repudiation of the old regime, proof that merit would finally matter more than politics. The transformation was immediate. Stock prices stabilized, then began climbing. Clients who'd fled returned, drawn by the promise of actual innovation instead of empty promises. The Pentagon increased our contract by 40%. But the sweetest moment came when I finally moved into the CEO office, the corner suite on the 50th floor that Richard had occupied like a king. I found a photo in his desk drawer, the executive team at last year's Christmas party, laughing while they planned my destruction. I kept it as a reminder. Then I replaced it on the wall with a photo of the next-gen team in our cramped Queens office, taken during those secret late-night sessions when we were building an empire from spite and ambition. Marcus called that evening. The FBI just announced 37 indictments related to Horizon Link's fraud. Brad's looking at 15 years minimum. Good, I said, staring out at the city lights from my executive windows. You did it, Amelia. The complete reversal. From intern to CEO in 6 months? No, I corrected. From intern to owner. CEO was just the beginning. That night, I worked late. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. The building was quiet, peaceful. My building now. As I walked through the floors, I remembered every humiliation, every degradation, every moment they'd tried to break me. They'd thought they were destroying Amelia Grant. Instead, they'd forged something harder, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous. A woman who knew how to play dead while planning resurrection, who could smile while documenting their crimes, who could fetch coffee while building an empire. The revenge was complete, but the real work was just beginning. Horizon Link, now next-gen technologies, would become everything it should have been. And somewhere in federal prison, Richard Blackstone and Brad Morrison would watch the news of our success, knowing they'd created their own destroyer. I signed the last document of the day, the official merger papers that made me the majority owner of a $100 million company. 6 months ago, they'd made me an intern. Now, I owned them all. 1 year later, I stood on the rooftop terrace of the Horizon Link building, my building, watching the sunset paint Manhattan in shades of gold and shadow. The company was unrecognizable from the corrupt giant it had been. We'd returned $800 million to defrauded clients. We'd promoted 300 overlooked employees. We'd become the case study for ethical corporate transformation at Harvard Business School. But tonight wasn't about the numbers. Tonight was about the final document on my desk. Brad Morrison's bankruptcy filing. He'd lost everything in the lawsuits: his apartment, his cars, his offshore accounts we'd helped the FBI locate. The last I'd heard, He was working at a small firm in Jersey, fetching coffee for partners who knew exactly who he was and what he'd done. The poetry of it was almost too perfect. "Ms. Grant," my assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Not an intern. We'd abolished that program. Every entry-level position was paid, respected, and given real opportunities. Your 7 p.m. is here." I'd been expecting this visit. Harold Whitman, the former board chairman, had requested this meeting for weeks. I'd finally agreed, curious about what he could possibly want. He entered looking like a ghost of his former self. The man who'd once commanded boardrooms now shuffled in, diminished and hollow. "Amelia," he began, then stopped. "Ms. Grant, thank you for seeing me." I gestured to a chair but remained standing. "What can I do for you, Harold?" I needed to apologize. Not for the board's sake or for some legal reason. For me. What we did to you was unconscionable. I studied him. The apology seemed genuine, but 6 months of fetching coffee for people who despised me had taught me to see through facades. "We knew Brad was lying about Singapore," he continued. "We knew the losses weren't your fault, but Richard convinced us you were getting too close to the fraud, that you'd expose us all. So we sacrificed you, threw you to the wolves to save ourselves." "And how did that work out for you?" I asked, my voice carrying no warmth. "I lost everything that mattered," he said quietly. "My reputation, my fortune, my family's respect, my daughter. She's your age. When she found out what we'd done to you, she hasn't spoken to me since. She said I'd betrayed everything I'd taught her about integrity." The silence stretched between us. Part of me wanted to rage at him, to list every humiliation, every moment of despair. But I'd learned something in my journey from intern to CEO. True power isn't in crushing the already broken, it's in building something better from the ashes. "Harold," I finally said, "I can't forgive what you did, but I can tell you this. Your betrayal made me stronger. Your cruelty taught me compassion for others who've been dismissed. Your corruption showed me the importance of transparency. In trying to destroy me, you created the leader Horizon Link desperately needed." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "The company's never been stronger. The employees have never been happier. You've accomplished more in 1 year than we did in 10. "Because I remembered something you all forgot," I said, moving to the window. "Companies aren't built on schemes and politics. They're built on people. Every intern you ignored, every assistant you belittled, every talent you wasted, they were the real power. I just gave them the chance to prove it." Harold stood to leave, then paused. "The FBI offered me a deal. Testify against Richard and Brad, get reduced sentence. I took it. They're both getting maximum sentences. I thought you should know." After he left, I remained at the window, watching the city lights flicker to life. My phone buzzed with a message from David. "Just closed the Tokyo deal. Next-Gen Technologies is officially valued at $1 billion. $1 billion. From intern to billionaire in 18 months. But the number that mattered more was different. 1,247. That's how many employees we'd promoted from within. How many careers we'd resurrected. How many people who'd been told they were worthless had proven they were invaluable." I picked up the framed photo from my desk, the one taken my first day back as CEO. The entire company assembled in the lobby, faces bright with hope instead of fear. In the front row stood all the interns, now junior executives, the security guards, now shareholders. The barista from the lobby, now running our employee wellness program. This was my revenge, not just taking the throne, but transforming the kingdom. Not just defeating my enemies, but building something they could never have imagined. My phone rang. It was the President of the United States' office, wanting to discuss our revolutionary infrastructure plan for rural America. As I took the call, I caught my reflection in the window. The woman staring back wasn't the eager director from 2 years ago or the broken intern from last year. She was something forged in fire and refined by revenge. A leader who'd learned that sometimes you have to fall all the way down to see how high you can really rise. "Madam President," I said, my voice steady and strong. I'd be honored to help rebuild America's infrastructure. After all, I know something about rebuilding from the ground up. As the call ended and night fully claimed the city, I allowed myself one moment of pure satisfaction. They'd tried to bury me, not knowing I was a seed. They'd tried to break me, not knowing I would reshape myself from the pieces. They'd made me an intern, not knowing they were creating their new CEO. The revenge was complete, the transformation was perfect, and somewhere in federal prison, two men were learning what I'd discovered in my darkest moments as an intern. The only thing worse than falling from power is watching someone you tried to destroy rise higher than you ever dreamed possible. I signed the last paper of the day. Approval for a company-wide bonus, funded by the recovered embezzled funds. Every employee who'd stayed through the darkness would share in the light. Because that's what real leadership looks like. Not crushing those beneath you, but lifting them up until there's no more beneath at all. The empire was built. The revenge was served, and Amelia Grant, intern, survivor, CEO, was just getting started. Thank you so much for listening to this story of corporate revenge and redemption. I hope Amelia's journey from the lowest point to the highest office inspired you as much as it did me. Where are you listening to this story from? Drop a comment below. I'd love to connect with listeners from around the world. If this tale of sweet revenge resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel for more stories of underdogs who refuse to stay down. And share your thoughts. Have you ever witnessed or experienced workplace injustice? How did you overcome it? Your stories inspire the next ones I tell. Until next time. Remember, sometimes the best revenge is massive success.